Blood ran down her thigh, dark against the dust. The heat in Red Hollow was merciless thick, choking, the kind that cracked the earth and boiled a man's thoughts. Leah Jennings stumbled barefoot across the open plain, her clothes ripped and hanging like dead leaves from her body. Each step left a mark of pain in the sand behind her. She didn't know where she was going, only that she had to keep moving. Her body was a map of bruises. Her breath came in ragged gasps. The sun beat down like judgment, and the wind carried the echo of laughter low, cruel, and distant, the kind that doesn't belong to the living. She swore she could still hear them, the men who did this to her. That laughter followed her out of hell. By the time she reached the edge of a lonely ranch, her knees buckled. She fell hard into the dirt, the world spinning around her. The last thing she saw before the darkness pressed in was the silhouette of a man, broad shoulders, slow stride, and the sound of boots crunching dry soil. Samuel Briggs stepped out from the shadow of his barn, 56 years old, beard gray at the chin, eyes sharp as a hawk. A man carved from dust and hard seasons. He hadn't spoken to a soul in weeks. Solitude had become his last religion. But what he saw lying in front of him stopped, his heart cold. The girl was wrecked. Dirt and blood clung to her skin. Her hair was tangled and stuck to her face. Tears had carved clean lines through the grime. She looked like something the land itself had chewed up and spat back out. "Please," she whispered, her voice barely a sound. Her trembling hands clutched what was left of her torn dress. I need to take it off. Please, help me." Samuel froze. He had seen dying men, broken horses, and blood spilled over land disputes that started with a glare. But this was something different. This was a soul ripped apart. He said nothing for a long moment. Then, with the slow gravity of an old man who still believed in decency, he spoke. "Come inside." Leah staggered to her feet, nearly falling again, and followed him into the small cabin. The air inside was heavy with the smell of coffee, tobacco, and old wood. Samuel poured water into a basin, grabbed a clean rag, and uncorked a bottle of whiskey. The sharp scent of alcohol filled the room as he cleaned her wounds, careful and slow. The girl didn't cry. She just bit her lip until it bled and stared at the floor. When he finally asked her name, she whispered it like a confession. "Leah Jennings." Samuel nodded. He didn't ask more. He could tell whatever had brought her here would hurt to hear. The silence stretched long. The only sound was the ticking of the clock on the shelf, and the wind moaning through the fence line outside. He looked at her again. Really looked, and something old inside him stirred. She reminded him of Mary, his sister, 16, when the soldiers came through the valley. He'd been away that night buying cattle. By the time he came home, she was gone. That guilt had never left him. It sat on his shoulders heavier than time. Now, staring at this broken girl, Samuel felt that same rage flicker alive again. But this time, he wouldn't walk away. "Drink this," he said, handing her a glass. "Whiskey and water." She took it, her fingers trembling, eyes red but steady. "Are you going to send me away?" she asked. He didn't answer right away. He looked out the window at the barren land, stretching endless beneath the burning sun, then back at her. "No, you're safe here." For the first time in years, Samuel Briggs said words he actually meant, and they hung heavy in the heat like a promise, or maybe a warning. When the sun began to set, Samuel stepped onto the porch. The sky burned orange, like old scars, refusing to fade. Inside, Leah was asleep, her body finally surrendering to exhaustion. He stood there a long while, watching the horizon. He'd spent years chasing silence, hiding from ghosts. But tonight, trouble had walked right through his door and bled on his floor. And for some reason, it felt right when he went back inside. Leah stirred. "I didn't mean to cause you no harm," she said weakly. Samuel shook his head. "You didn't." He poured 2 cups of coffee, and slid one across the table. Steam curled between them like a fragile peace treaty. "Who did this to you?" he asked. Finally, she hesitated. Her fingers tightened around the cup until her knuckles turned white. "The mayor's sons," she whispered. "Said my daddy owed them money, but he's been gone near a month. The fever took him. They came anyway." Samuel's jaw clenched. He'd seen their kind before, men who thought money made them gods. Men who believed pain was theirs to hand out. "Those boys ever pay for what they do?" he asked. Leah gave a bitter, broken laugh. "In this town, they don't pay for nothing." Samuel stared at the fire. Its flicker painted his face in gold and shadow. Something hard and cold settled in his chest. He remembered Mary. He remembered doing nothing. That memory burned deeper than any brand. He stood up slowly, the way a man stands when he's made peace with a bad decision. "You can stay here," he said. Leah's eyes widened. "You're not afraid they'll come?" Samuel looked toward the door. "They can come if they want." Silence filled the room again, but this time it wasn't empty. It was heavy, filled with something unspoken. Maybe it was hope. Maybe it was fury wearing a softer face. Leah set her cup down, her voice steady. "I don't want to hide forever." "You won't," he said. He turned to hang his rifle on the wall, but his hands hesitated. Then, instead, he set it down on the table, where the light from the fire touched the barrel. Outside, coyotes howled somewhere deep in the valley. Inside, Samuel Briggs felt something he hadn't felt in 20 years. Purpose. He blew out the lantern, leaving only the glow of the dying fire. In that small cabin, with a wounded girl and a waiting rifle, he whispered into the dark, "If they come for her, they'll have to go through me first." But the night didn't answer. It just listened, until the faint rhythm of hooves cut through the wind. Slow, steady, and growing closer. Samuel froze. That sound was carved into his bones. Trouble had a rhythm. Trouble wore spurs. He stepped to the window, eyes narrowing against the dusk. Out on the plains, a cloud of dust rose. 6 riders, moving in formation, their silhouettes black against the dying sun. He didn't need to count twice. 3 of them were the mayor's sons. The other 3 were hired guns. Leah came halfway down the stairs, pale and wide-eyed. "They found me," she breathed. Samuel's voice was calm, steady as stone. "Upstairs, loft above my room. Don't make a sound." "Samuel," she began, her voice trembling. "Please don't do something stupid." He gave her a thin, crooked smile. Too late for that. When she disappeared into the shadows above, Samuel checked his rifle. The metal smelled of oil and old ghosts. He walked onto the porch, where the evening light stretched long across the dirt. The riders slowed to a halt 20 feet away. Their leader, Thomas Barkley, the oldest son, grinned like a man who'd never been told no. "Afternoon, Mr. Briggs," he drawled. "Heard a young lady came by your way. Goes by the name Leah Jennings." Samuel leaned against the post, rifle in hand but low. "Ain't seen no young lady." "Why?" Thomas smirked. "She stole from the bank. Daddy wants his money back." Samuel let out a dry chuckle. "Funny, I didn't know the Jennings girl ever worked for a bank." That wiped the grin right off Thomas's face. The sheriff spat in the dust. "Mind if we look around?" Samuel straightened. His shadow stretched long across the dirt between them. "You got a warrant?" The sheriff's jaw tightened. "Don't need one if you've got nothing to hide." Samuel looked down at his boots, then up again, his voice calm and cold. "Funny thing about the law out here. A man's land is his castle, and uninvited guests, they ain't welcome." For a moment, no one moved. The wind carried the smell of sweat and gunpowder waiting to happen. Thomas finally tugged his reins. "We'll be back, old man." Samuel nodded once. "I'll be right here." As the riders turned and vanished into the dusk, Samuel's eyes stayed fixed on the horizon. He knew the storm wasn't over. It had only just started. The storm broke that night. Wind howled across the valley, dragging sheets of dust through the cracks of Samuel's old cabin. The smell of rain lingered, mixed with the metallic temps of gun oil. Samuel sat by the fire, the rifle across his knees, his hands moving slow and methodical. He wasn't praying, but he was close. Some men talked to God with words. Others did it by cleaning their weapon. Leah couldn't sleep. She sat by the window upstairs, watching lightning split the sky wide open. Each flash lit the fear on her face. Somewhere out there, she knew, those men were waiting for dawn, waiting to come back. She crept down the stairs, quiet as the wind. Samuel didn't look up. "Can't sleep?" he asked, voice low, gravel soft. She shook her head. "Been thinking." He poured her a cup of coffee. It was bitter and too late in the night for it, but it gave them something to hold. "They'll come back," she said. "You know that." "Yeah," Samuel said. "I know." She leaned forward, eyes catching the firelight. "What if we didn't wait?" That made him look up. "What are you saying?" Leah's voice trembled, not with fear, but fire. "The bank. Every fake loan. Every deal they forced people into, it's all written down. If we can get proof, we can end this." Samuel stared at her for a long moment. "You're talking about breaking into a bank. That's a hanging offense." "So is what they did to me," she said quietly. "Difference is, they got away with it." The words hit him like a hammer. For a second, Samuel saw her not as a broken girl, but as someone standing up to the same evil that once took his sister. There was no fear left in her eyes, no, only resolve. He leaned back, thinking, "Old man Berkeley's too cheap to fix that back window. Always said, ain't nobody dumb enough to crawl through broken glass." Leah's lips curved just slightly. "Guess he never met us." By midnight, they were riding through the rain. The dirt streets of Red Hollow had turned into rivers of mud. The bank stood at the end of Main Street, dark, silent, a shadow against the flickering lanterns. The kind of place built on stolen dreams. Samuel dismounted first. His boots hit the ground without a sound. Leah followed, pulling her coat tight. Her hand brushed the small pistol he'd given her, just in case. "Stay behind me," Samuel murmured. They moved like ghosts. Leah found the broken window behind the bank, her fingers bleeding as she pulled the shards away. She didn't stop. The glass bit her skin, but pain was a language she already spoke. Inside, the air was thick with dust and secrets. Samuel lit a lantern barely, just enough to see. They didn't talk, didn't need to. Leah headed straight for the file drawers. She moved fast, her fingers sure, flipping through ledgers and contracts. "Here," she whispered. Samuel brought the light closer. He squinted at the pages, loan papers, fake accounts, signatures forged by the mayor himself. Names of farmers, widows, men who lost everything. "This ain't just the Barclays," Samuel muttered. "Half the damn town's in on it." Leah's hand trembled as she copied the names onto a sheet of paper. "If we get this to the marshals in Denver, it'll be enough." He nodded. "Then let's move." But before they could finish, Samuel froze. Footsteps. Slow, heavy, coming from the front door. He blew out the lantern. The room sank into black dot. Voices drifted through the hall. "Check the back," one said. "I saw a light." Samuel's heart pounded. He pressed a finger to his lips. Leah nodded, clutching the papers tight. They moved toward the side door, but the front latch snapped open. The glow of a lantern spilled across the room. Well, a voice drawled. "Look what we got here." The sheriff stepped into view, flanked by two of the mayor's sons. The rain streaked their coats. Their smiles were sharp as knives. "Didn't expect to find you here, Briggs," the sheriff said. "Old man playing hero, huh?" Samuel didn't answer. His hand tightened around the rifle. "Step aside," the sheriff continued. "We'll take the girl. Might even let you keep breathing." Samuel exhaled slowly, like a man settling a debt. You boys got one chance to walk away. The youngest Barkley laughed. And leave all this? Nah, I think we'll stay. Then everything happened at once. The thunder outside cracked. Leia dove for cover as gunfire exploded. The flash from the rifles lit the room like lightning. Samuel dropped behind the desk, firing back once, twice clean, precise. 2 men fell before they hit the floorboards. The sheriff cursed and fired blind. A bullet tore through Samuel's sleeve, grazing his arm. He didn't flinch. He stood, aimed, and fired again. The sheriff stumbled back, his lantern crashing to the ground. Flames licked across the spilled oil. Samuel, Leia shouted, grabbing his arm. The fire spread fast, eating through old wood and paper. Go, he barked. She hesitated, but one look from him told her everything. There was no time. She ran, clutching the evidence. As Samuel turned back toward the rising fire, the last man standing, the oldest Barkley, charged through the smoke, pistol raised. You should have stayed out of this, old man. Samuel's shot came first. 1 bullet, clean through the chest. The mayor's son fell, the gun slipping from his hand. By the time Samuel stumbled outside, flames were already reaching the roof. The bank was burning from the inside out. Rain hissed against the fire, but couldn't kill it. Leia was waiting with the horses, her face streaked with soot and tears. You all right? She asked. He nodded, though blood soaked through his sleeve. Let's ride. They didn't stop until the lights of Red Hollow were far behind them. When the sun finally rose over the valley, smoke still curled from what used to be the town bank. It took days for the flames to die and longer for the truth to reach Denver. But when it did, justice rode fast. By noon a week later, a line of federal marshals thundered into Red Hollow. Their badges caught the light like sparks. They didn't ask questions. They didn't take sides. By sundown, the mayor, his sons, and the sheriff were all in chains. The town that had lived in fear for 20 years was suddenly quiet to quiet, like a wound learning to heal. From a hill above, Samuel and Leia watched it all. The morning breeze tugged at her hair. The sun rose soft across the plains. Your father would have been proud, Samuel said quietly. Leia looked at him, her voice barely above the wind. Maybe, but it was you who gave me a chance to fight. He shook his head. You did that yourself. They stood there a long time, saying nothing. Words weren't needed. Weeks passed. Red Hollow began to change. The townsfolk repaired the burned buildings. People started to talk to each other again. To Hope. One afternoon, Samuel rode into town, hat in hand, and found Leia standing in front of the old general store, the one that had belonged to her family before everything went wrong. The government had returned it to her. You could rebuild this place, he said. Make it bigger than before. Leia smiled, small and quiet. Maybe, or maybe I'll use it to help others. Folks who lost everything like I did. Samuel nodded. That'd be something. For the first time in a long while, he felt peace. Real peace. The kind that doesn't need forgiveness, only purpose. As they stood there, a warm wind swept through Red Hollow, carrying the smell of dust and new beginnings. People still talk about that night, the night the town changed. Some say it was justice. Others call it fate. But those who were there know the truth. It was a choice made by 2 people who refused to stay silent. Because sometimes, it only takes one person brave enough to stand up to evil for others to find their courage. And sometimes, one act of defiance can set a whole town free. Now, let me ask you something. If you were Samuel Briggswood, you have done the same. Would you risk everything to protect someone the world had already turned its back on? Take a breath. Take a sip of your drink. Think about it, and if this story moved you even a little, don't forget to hold on to kindness. It's rarer than gold out here, because the world still needs people like Samuel Briggs, people who don't run from the storm, They ride straight into it.